Hey everyone, Noir here. Let's get into today's Reddit story.
My name is Lauren Parker, and I am 26 years old. It was 2 o'clock on a Thursday morning when the pain hit me without warning. Earlier that evening, I had noticed a dull ache on the lower right side of my abdomen, but I kept telling myself it was probably gas or something I had eaten. Then, at exactly 2 o'clock, that small ache became unbearable. The pain was so intense that I ended up crawling across the floor because I could not stay on my feet. I could hardly breathe. Sweat soaked through my shirt, my whole body was shaking, and I gripped the edge of the bathroom sink while staring at my reflection. It felt like I was watching someone else fall apart instead of myself. Right then, I knew something was seriously wrong. I grabbed my phone and called my mum. She did not answer. I called again, but there was still no response. Then I called my dad. The call went straight to voicemail. I kept dialing both of their numbers over and over. My hands were trembling so badly that it was difficult just to tap the screen. By the time I had made my 17th call, I was lying on the kitchen floor with my phone pressed against my ear, listening to the same voicemail greeting I had heard my entire life. "You have reached Richard Parker. Please leave a message." I left 3 messages. Each one sounded more desperate than the last. During the final message, I was crying so hard that I do not even know if my words made sense. I said, "Dad, I think I am dying. Please come." Nobody came. Everything that happened after that was told to me later by the paramedics. My neighbor, Mrs. Simmons, a retired woman in her 60s who barely even knew my name, heard me collapse through the thin apartment wall. She called 911. By the time the ambulance arrived, I was barely conscious. The paramedics told me that my appendix had already burst. They also said that if I had stayed on that kitchen floor for another 30 minutes, the outcome would probably have been very different. They never actually used the word death, but I understood exactly what they meant. I was rushed into emergency surgery. While I was on the operating table, my heart stopped. I flatlined. The surgical team managed to bring me back, but for a brief moment, I was gone. I did not see a bright light or hear mysterious voices. All I remember is complete silence. Then, suddenly, everything came rushing back. I heard machines beeping, people calling my name, and I felt an intense pain in my chest from the chest compressions. When I finally woke up in the recovery room, I was groggy and confused. A nurse was sitting beside my bed. The first thing I asked was whether my parents had come. She looked at me with an expression I will never forget. It was not exactly pity, but it was close. She explained that my emergency contacts had been called and that someone had come to the hospital. Before she could tell me anything else, my surgeon walked into the room. Dr. Lawson was a calm man with tired eyes and a steady voice. Instead of giving me a quick update, he pulled a chair next to my bed and sat down. The moment he did that, I knew this was not going to be a routine conversation after surgery. He looked at me and said, "Holly, you had a very serious night. We almost lost you." I nodded because I already knew that much. Then he told me something I never expected to hear. "A woman who identified herself as your mother came to the hospital tonight," he said. "She tried to have you discharged early." I just stared at him. I honestly thought I had heard him wrong. Discharged? I had just flatlined on an operating table. Dr. Lawson continued. "She was informed that discharging you was impossible because of your condition. She became argumentative with the hospital staff." I felt the room begin to spin. He paused for a moment, glanced toward the doorway, and then said, "But the man who paid your hospital bill said—" Before he could finish, the door to my room slowly opened. A man I had never seen before stood in the doorway. He looked to be somewhere in his mid-50s. He was broad-shouldered, dressed in a simple grey jacket and dark trousers. His eyes were kind, the kind that seemed to carry years of experience without saying a word. He was not flashy, and he did not immediately look wealthy or important. Instead, He looked like the sort of quiet, dependable father people naturally trusted. He stepped into the room slowly, almost as though he was not sure he belonged there. Dr. Lawson stood, gave him a respectful nod, and quietly left the room, leaving the two of us alone. Almost without thinking, I pulled my hospital blanket up a little higher and asked who he was. He sat down in the chair Dr. Lawson had just left, folded his hands together, and introduced himself as Walter Hayes. Gerald explained that he had been visiting his own brother in another part of the hospital that night when he overheard an argument at the front desk. He told me my mother had been loudly demanding that the hospital release me because, in his exact words, her other daughter's baby shower was the next morning and the whole family needed to be home. Gerald told me the nurses immediately refused my mother's request. They explained that I was in critical condition after surgery and that releasing me from the hospital could literally cost me my life. According to Gerald, my mother's next question was whether there was any paperwork she could sign to override the doctor's decision. He had been standing about 20 feet away, watching everything unfold as a complete stranger, and he said something about the situation deeply bothered him in a way he could not explain. He quietly asked one of the nurses what had happened to the patient everyone was talking about. The nurse could not give him personal medical details, but he saw enough on his own. He noticed that no family member stayed with me. He watched my mother walk out of the hospital. Then he went to the billing desk and asked about my situation. When he learned that I was there alone, and that a gap in my insurance coverage could delay my treatment because of financial issues, he paid the bill himself without hesitation. Just like that, a man I had never met covered my hospital expenses, so the medical staff could continue treating me without any administrative delays. I did not know what to say. I honestly had no words. Only a few minutes earlier, I had learned that my own mother tried to have me discharged from the hospital only hours after my heart had stopped, all because she wanted to get home for my sister's baby shower. Now a complete stranger, whose last name I had not even known 5 minutes earlier, was sitting beside my bed telling me he had made sure I received the care that kept me alive. I completely broke down. It was not quiet crying. It was the kind of uncontrollable sobbing that comes from years of hurt finally pouring out all at once. Gerald never tried to interrupt me. He did not tell me everything would be okay, or offer empty words. He simply stayed there with me. Looking back, that was exactly what I needed. Later that afternoon, my parents finally came to the hospital. My mum walked into the room first. The very first thing she said was that her phone had been on silent, so she had not heard my calls. 17 missed calls. She claimed she never heard a single one. A few moments later, she noticed the flowers sitting on the windowsill and asked where they had come from. Gerald had left them there before returning upstairs to visit his brother. I told her that a stranger had bought them for me. She looked at them for a second and simply said, "Well, that's odd." She never once asked why a stranger had stepped in to help me. My dad spent the entire visit standing near the door with his arms folded across his chest. He quietly agreed with everything my mum said, but he never came over to sit beside me. They stayed for about 40 minutes before leaving. My mum explained they still had to finish cleaning up after the baby shower. She even smiled while telling me my sister had a wonderful morning and said I would have loved being there. After they left, I lay quietly in my hospital bed and made a decision that felt surprisingly clear. I decided I was finished twisting myself into someone else's version of what I should be, just to earn love that had never truly been there. Gerald came to visit me twice more before I was released from the hospital. During his final visit, he brought his wife, Diane. She was warm and gentle. She held my hand and smiled before saying, "You have people, sweetheart. You just have not met all of them yet." I still think about those words every single day. Later, one of the nurses told me that Gerald had officially reported my mother's attempt to have me discharged to the hospital's patient advocacy office. He never mentioned it himself. That simply was not the kind of man he was. He did the right thing because it was the right thing to do, not because he wanted recognition. The hospital documented everything, which meant there would always be an official record in case anything had happened because of outside interference. Today, I have fully recovered. I am still trying to figure out what my relationship with my parents will look like, but one thing has become completely clear. I finally stopped confusing who they really are with who I desperately wanted them to be. Those are not the same people. For a long time, I convinced myself they were. Gerald and Diane have become family to me in every way that truly matters. They taught me that real family is not defined by blood or obligation. It is defined by who shows up, who stays, and who chooses to care when it matters most. If my story has reached you today, I hope you remember one thing. The people who stand beside you during the darkest moments of your life, even if they are complete strangers, even if they ask for nothing in return, are often the people who teach you what genuine love really looks like. Sometimes it takes coming frighteningly close to losing your life before you finally realize whose hands were never truly holding on to you in the first place. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe to this channel. Every week we share true stories about survival, betrayal, unexpected acts of kindness, and the quiet strength that ordinary people show every day, even when nobody else notices. Subscribe, turn on notifications, and join a community that believes real stories deserve to be heard. Your support means more than you know, and every story we share matters. This story is dedicated to everyone who has ever cried out for help and was met with silence. You are not forgotten.